Good afternoon, everyone. I hope that well, this is not even afternoon. Let's go ahead and
What is
start that
this?
back.
Evening?
Whoop. Evening. Good evening, everyone. We are so excited to be here, and this is the first of a powerful segment talking about real life issues, talking about our children, trying to move the needle in our own way of doing it by talking about these issues, talking about what's going on to better impact our children. And that's what this is all about. It's about the fight for our children and
Yes.
what can we do better. And so I have here my co-host for today's show, the whole child, and that's Kimberlyn. Go ahead, Kimberlyn, introduce yourself to the people, let people know who you are and what you're about.
Hey, y'all. I am so excited to be here. I'm so glad, Bianca, that we were finally able to pin something down to be able to come to the people. My name is Kimberlyn Jackson. I am a 14-year educator here in Hillsborough County. I'm an educational consultant, advocate for our most needy students that are often in our achievement schools, Title I schools, really just looking to make an impact in the community and empower the community and parents so that we are truly able to break the generational cycles that are happening with our kids. So I'm excited to be here. This has been in the works for a little bit. So what up, y'all? We ready to have this talk.
We ready. We ready. Listen, and this is what this is all about. It's about children. It's about breaking, issues. It's about generational curses, breaking that, and really focusing on the whole child, like
Yes.
getting to the root. What's really going on in our children, and this requires everyone that's watching. Some of you may come in and out. Some of you are watching the whole time. I want you guys to comment and try to learn something from this, gather something, some strategies that you can use in the future, to help with your parenting, help with your children, because, we're seeing so many issues that's happening in our educational system, and we can't just sit by and be silent. We have to
Right.
do everything that we can to help our children, because right now, a lot of stuff just seems like I just feel bad for our future generation the way it's turning out right now.
Yeah, there's just so much misinformation and lack of information out there that is making it easy for our kids to get marginalized. So I think this is going to be a powerful way for us to really get that information out there so that parents are able to advocate for their students and really get to the root, like you said, of what's going on. So on our inaugural show, right? So we did this kind of like a test run and we talked about restorative practices and what that really means. So after that show, we said, man, this is so much to unpack. There is so much going on, and we just really need to take it step by step. So here we are with this series, and we're just going to get the information out there so that you all are able to get your questions answered and really get some key information that you're going to be able to use for us to really help our kids.
I'm excited.
Me too.
The last episode, let's just talk about the last episode real quick. I was so
Mhm.
mind blown. Like, I don't know if you saw it in my face, but I was like, man, this is a lot to unpack. Like,
It
we
is.
we have to do this. And I received so many comments. They was like, oh my gosh, you and Kimberlyn are so awesome. You guys have so much wisdom. They talked about you so much. And I was like, yes,
Oh,
we have to do this. Because again, if not us, then who?
right. Yeah, for sure. And I think it's really important, especially like I said, for our Black and Brown students, they don't often have a voice out here in the marketplace. So many things happen to them, and they don't have people who look like them advocating on their behalf. So it's really important for us to be that voice and to really just speak up and speak out about all of the things that we can do, because there is a lot. And it may feel like from time to time that this is insurmountable and it's just no way to be able to help. But we really want to be able to give you all some type of strategies or something, that action steps that you're able to use so that you can make a difference. It is a lot. We're not going to lie. Like, it's a lot. But there are things, there are things that we can do. And the more that we know, the better able that we are to make changes in the things that we do. So we just got to keep getting this information. So that's why we here.
So let's get started. What we talking about? What we talking about, Kimberly?
Well, real quick, I wanted to again kind of recap from our last show. So we talked about restorative practices and what that even means. And then we also talked about trauma and some of the brain research that goes into trauma and how it affects our students. So one of the things that we talked about is how when students are living in trauma, and trauma could be many different things that are going on in their environment, they wind up in a situation where they're consistently in fight or flight mode, fight, flight, or freeze mode. And that is not the ideal condition for the brain to be in, for any student to be able to learn, for any person to be able to function effectively. So it's important for us to recognize that so that we can help teach our students de escalation strategies and teach them things to be able to bring themselves back down. So that's when we talked about restorative practices. And restorative practices is basically just a way of working so that you can get to the root cause. It consists of things like mindfulness and breathing strategies and things of that nature so that a person is able to center themselves and really bring themselves back down to homeostasis, which is that level of balance. And it's just like asking good questions, which is going to be a theme through what we're talking about, that we really need to make sure we're asking good questions and truly acknowledging that kids have thoughts, that kids have feelings. Even if they were the one who made the poor choice, they still had a thought process behind it. So using everything as a learning experience as opposed to using it as a discipline experience. So if you all did not catch that first show, we do want you to go back and check that out because there was a lot of information there that really laid the groundwork for everything. But today we want to talk about this school to prison pipeline.
Ooh.
So, if the people have been following you, Bianca, we know that this is one of your passions. You talk about this often. There was an ACLU report that was done in Hillsborough County that really talks about the school to prison pipeline. So, I kind of want to take some time today to demystify the school to prison pipeline because I feel like we use it, but I'm all about making sure that we have common understanding of the language that we're using so that we don't get caught up in all of the jargon or what have you. And again, making sure that we have real information that we can share about it. So basically, the school to prison pipeline is a process where kids are pushed out of schools and into prison. So that's just like the basic definition of what it is. And it happens a lot of different ways. And it starts as early as preschool. I want to let that kind of sink in for a moment. So in preschool, we have kids that are what, 3,
Mm-hmm.
4 years old, right? And this process starts as early as preschool of getting students in a position where we're pushing them out of traditional school, setting them up to be retained, and pushing them to almost eventually drop out of school. And then once they're out of school, well, now they're on the streets. So what else, right, do we expect to happen? So, as I was doing my research and really preparing for today, I'm like, preschool, bro?
Yeah.
Preschool.
And even the VPK programs, like by your zip code and where you're at, there's different levels of learning and engagement by your zip code, which is again, we go back to the systemic issues that's plaguing, our educational system.
Right. So you might be asking yourself, what does that look like? Like, how do kids get set up in preschool, getting ready for the school to prison pipeline? So one of the things that we know is that kids get suspended from preschool. Did you know that?
I knew that.
That kids getting put out of how you get put out the VPK?
Because again, they continue to do where they say a child did a behavior, and so they say, okay, you're going to be pushed out because of the behavior, but they're not providing resources to figure out what the root of the behavior is.
Yeah, and when you talk about some of those behaviors, so there's been research that has been done actually with preschool teachers and elementary school teachers where they set up a situation of, let's say they're watching a video of students doing normal 3 to 4 year old behavior, right? And they tell the teachers that there are some students that have a condition. So one of the conditions that is a favorite is the oppositional defiant disorder, right? So they say, some of these students have ODD, and some of these students are really exhibiting problematic behaviors, right? And disproportionately, those students are identified as students of color. Now, what they're actually witnessing in the video is, again, normal 3 year old, 4 year old behavior. Kids don't know how to share. A kid gets frustrated because somebody took the toy. They crying. They have a temper tantrum. They throw something down. Like, this is normal 3 year old, 4 year old behavior. But because it was set up in a way that the teachers are told to look for behaviors that are problematic, their bias causes them to lean towards students of color, because the perception of students of color is that they are problematic.
Mm-hmm.
hmm So, bias, let's kind of unpack what that means. Um, so there's something called implicit bias. And first off, let me say that everybody has bias, right? So I can say I went to an all girls school for high school. And it never occurred to me at this all girls school that I wasn't smart, right? We were all geniuses. So as far as I was concerned, like, girls are just brilliant, right? But then I moved to Hillsborough County and I started teaching. And what I noticed in my classroom is that my girls, and I taught science, is that my girls would shrink in the presence of boys. So they would kind of just act like they didn't know the answer. And I'm knowing that you know the answer because I just talked to you about it, but they in their minds felt like they weren't smart, or again, they had to shrink in the presence of someone else that they perceived to be smarter than them. So what that did is it caused me to have a bias, because I was like, I'm about to push these girls, because I'll be doggone that you're about to sit up here and act like you're stupid on my watch. Like, we'll wait, ma'am. We will wait. What is the
Right.
answer, right?
Right.
So I discovered that I have a bias towards girls, right? So I want to make sure that Black and brown girls win, that girls win. Like, that is my thing. Being a brown girl is really important to me, for people like that look like me to win, right? That's a bias. So we all have biases. Bias becomes an issue, though, when we put behaviors along with that bias that cause discriminatory practices. So you might be thinking in your mind of a bias that you have, and there's nothing wrong with having a bias until that bias causes somebody else to be marginalized or hurt because of the bias that you own.
You better
So
preach.
so back to the situation with the teachers, the preschool teachers, because they have bias already about students of color. I started saying colored students. They already have bias with students of color. Then they, because of their bias, say, oh, well, these students must be the ones that are exhibiting the problematic behavior. So when I have this bias and then I see behaviors that confirm my bias, then that's what causes the discriminatory practice. Make sense?
Mm. Yep.
So when we're looking at preschools and we're looking at the research that's happening in preschools and the kids that are getting suspended from preschool, again, I want to stress that preschoolers are 3 to 4 years old. I just want to put that back out there again, like 3 to 4. Okay, cool. Right. So when we're looking at the suspension rates in preschool, the majority of the students that are getting suspended from preschool are Black and brown kids. So now you've gotten suspended from preschool, right? Which causes you to be out of preschool. But now you also start to have this record that's following you. So now you get into regular school, but you're already viewed as a problem, because as soon as you get into the system, there's this thing called a CUME file that we keep on children. And it is like a wealth of knowledge. Like, you find out all types of things in the CUME file. But this is some of the information that is included in the CUME file. Now, the CUME file is supposed to be used to be able to help students and really figure out the work that been done beforehand so that you know what type of interventions and strategies that you want to use in order to further a student's education. But it also can have a negative impact, especially when you're talking about people that have bias, because again, you're looking for confirmation for things that you already think. So getting suspended from VPK is one of those things that might show up in the CUME file. So now when you get to kindergarten, you're already looked at, student, now 5-year-old, as a behavior issue.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if the teacher has bias, again, and the teacher isn't looking to say, this is a fresh year, like this is a 5-year-old exhibiting normal 5-year-old behavior, then that can cause that teacher again, or the people at the school, to look for behaviors to confirm that. And now kids are getting suspended from kindergarten, from elementary school, and every day out of school is causing that student to miss instruction.
And also, studies show that they're less likely to graduate.
Correct. So when we one of my position when I was in the district was as a student success coach, and the whole reason that student success coaches exist, so they used to be dropout prevention specialists, is the same position, just a different name. But the point of a student success coach was to help kids experience success again. So when I would go through my caseload and I would look at my students, and most of my students would be overage, they've experienced some type of difficulty in the past, whether that had to do with attendance, behavior, or grades. These issues started way back in elementary school. So they have been experiencing failure or perceived failure again since 3, 4, 5 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So now you're in middle school, and the age to be able to drop out is 16. And you are now 15 and a half in middle school because you've been retained because you feel like you're a failure. And now the next logical thing to do is, well, clearly I'm not good at school. So let me roll up out of here.
Yeah, I've seen it.
So go ahead.
I've seen that type of situation take place, and that's where we go back to the trauma. Because when you have children that constantly feel as though I'm not enough, I'm not worthy, I can't do it, and all of that toxicness that just comes in. And then if you have a household that is not uplifting you and say you can do it, and you can make it, and give them that reasonable support to help them maneuver accordingly, it's
Mm,
literally a rat race in our children's mind. And on top of compounding that with social media, where
right.
they see all of these different people out here winning, and they're not working a job, they just on
Mm-hmm.
YouTube. So
Mm-hmm.
I've asked several teenagers lately. I did a
Mm-hmm.
poll and I said, what do you want to be when you grow up? I want to say 60% of the students had said that they want to be a social media influencer.
Wow.
Nothing else, just a social
Mm,
media influencer. So that lets me know that they are paying attention to what's happening on social media. And that's where they seek success. They see the likes and all that, but they don't see
right.
success in school. So
Right.
this is why I can see why a lot of children shut down. And I've seen where children have shut down and they say, you know what, Miss G, I'm going to drop out. I'll never forget my child E3. That's his nickname.
Mm-hmm.
And he was 15 and a half, turning 16 in the eighth grade, had already failed eighth grade before, and relocated here to Tampa. And he, implicit bias. You had teachers that said he was going to sell drugs and all this type of stuff.
Mm,
And you know what, he shut down. He ended up being removed from the school that I was teaching at. He went to Brandon, and he plays football for the little leagues, but he can't play. He can't go to Armwood. He wanted to go to Armwood to play
mm,
football. So now he just completely given up because the one thing that he wanted, sports, to play in
right.
high school, he can't do.
Yeah. And what's so interesting, like you were just talking about um this the deficit thinking, right? And expectations that we have of our kids. Um it's sad to say, I'm trying to like be very careful with my words, but it's really sad that we have educators who stand in front of kids who don't believe that kids are able to achieve. They don't believe that they don't even give kids an opportunity to
Mhm.
show that they can achieve. We have educators, for instance, again, I'll just kind of speak to the middle. So a student might be in 8th grade, but their teacher isn't giving them an opportunity to access on level text or on level work. So we have teachers that are teaching students in 8th grade, but they're teaching them with a 4th grade curriculum. Now, granted, research shows that if a student does not know how to read by 4th grade, and when we talk about the school to prison pipeline, I think it's about 70% of people who are, yeah, who are prison inmates can't read above a 4th grade level, right? So illiteracy is an issue, right? However, I still can't, I'm gonna use this term, I hate it, but I'm gonna use it, dummy down what it is that a student has to learn. What we have to do is scaffold up so that the student can access. So I don't, because the test doesn't change.
Right.
Right. So when we're talking about when students get retained in regards to FSA and all of that, they still have to meet the same target. They still have to meet the same graduation requirements. So if I lower the bar for what it is that you have to achieve, then I'm never pushing you up to where you have to go.
Right.
Right. So we have to be really aware of the type of curriculum that's being used within our kids' classrooms. Like really, for instance, I know April Cobb and Dr. Kamitra Edwards just had the FSA experience this past weekend, right? And the whole point of that was to empower parents with the information about what kids have to do on the FSA.
Mhm.
Well, unfortunately, it wasn't standing room only, right? There were people there, but we really should have been busting down the doors to figure out what it is that our kids need to know so that we can make sure that that's what they're being taught in the classroom.
Yeah.
Because if we're not monitoring that, then our kids are already set up for a disadvantage because we're not aware of what's happening and we don't know the right questions to ask. So we're just kind of leaving it on the school for the school to figure it out. But unfortunately, all schools are not created equal and all educators are not created equal. So like parents, we have to be involved. We have to ask questions. We have to really unpack and uncover what's being placed in front of our students and making sure that our students are getting the opportunity to even be able to succeed.
And you hit something, the parents don't know what they don't know. And
Yeah,
so we go back to that. And some parents, and I'm gonna just be really, transparent on this one. Some parents are in survival mode, like how we were talking about our kids in
for
survival
sure.
mode, that they can't even be intentional with making sure that their children's education is on point because they're just trying to make sure that their house is on point, making
Right,
sure that
right.
they are on point because of all the obstacles that they're facing. And again, I just hate the way that our world is structured, where we continue to see and we continue to put profits over the people.
Hmm.
And this is why we continue to squeeze all the profits that we can. And at the end of the day, all of the people are getting hurt by it. And it's
Yeah.
only a group of people that's really making all the money out of all of it at the end of the
Hmm.
day. And so we have to kind of change that. So like, I know this deviating from the topic, but what do you think that we can do to increase parental involvement to where they can ask those intentional questions? Because I hear it from parents, some they just don't know what they don't know.
Hmm. Yeah, I definitely think parents really have to um well, first off, as schools, we have to do a better job of opening the door for parents to come in. I feel like elementary school does a pretty good job at that, but especially once our kids get older and they get into middle school and high school, it's kind of like we meet the parents at the door and we're like, "We got this. Back up. We'll give them back to you at 4:30 or whatever time." So the schools need to do a better job. I think as parents, it can start with the types of questions that you even ask your kids. Right. So when we ask our kids after school and we ask the standard question, how was school today? And what did they say?
Fine. It was all right.
Oh,
Okay.
okay. It was good.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, all right. All right. All right. Right. So that's it. Like that's the
Yeah.
end of the conversation. There's
Right.
nothing, there's nowhere else to go. right?
Mhm.
As opposed to asking your child what they learned today. What was something that made you smile today? What was something that you would change if you could today? What disappointed you today at school? Um, what if you could speak up for somebody else at your school, who would you speak up for? Right, so really trying to uncover the things that are happening behind the scenes that our students might perceive as normal, right? But it's not normal. I'll give you an example. I heard the other day that at one of the schools that there was a student that was cracking a substitute teacher's back. Okay.
Mm.
So the parent got wind of it some type of way, asked questions or whatever. So of course the parent is upset. But the parent also said, my child didn't think anything of it because I have my child massage my feet at home. So the child wasn't bothered. The child was just like, "Oh, okay, cool. Teach the substitute teacher need their back cracked. I got you, right? I do this at home. I do this for my mama." So the perception was that it was normal. However, that's not what this looks like in a classroom, right? So we sometimes our kids think that things are normal, but when we really start to unpack what's going on, we might have a problem with that. So, but we have to ask questions to be able to uncover that. Tell me about the best part of your day. Like we just and let them talk. That's the other thing. So a lot of times, and there's research that shows, especially with our black and brown kids, that they get more directives than they do questions and opportunities to speak.
Now that is
So
a word.
we really have to give our kids opportunities to speak. I want you to know, even we were talking about earlier preschoolers, kids have thoughts. Like even a 3-year old, they have thoughts and they know why they have thoughts. We just have to allow them to answer. But what happens is we ask a question and then we answer for them. How was school today? Oh, it was good, right? That's a loaded question. Of course, they're going to say yes, right? Or they may take a moment, like some people are internal processors. So, for instance, I am. Somebody asks me a question, I take a moment to think about what I'm going to say before I say that. Well, we have to get comfortable with the uncomfortable silence so that we can actually get an answer. Like if you ask a question, wait for the answer.
Right. And
And
be emotionally available to receive that too.
whatever that might look like, because you never know what might come out of their mouth. You hope that it's something positive, but it very well may be something that you have to address. So, yes, be available. I try to make it a personal practice. I don't ask people how they're doing if I don't have the time to truly respond, if they just so happen to tell me that they're not well.
Mhm.
So I don't do it. Like we do that all the time. Hey, how you doing? All right. We didn't even listen for the answer. So
Mhm.
that emotional availability of being there and giving our undivided attention to be able to receive whatever that response might be. So important.
Yeah. That's deep.
It is. It really is. So when you ask what parents can do, again, parents can ask better questions. Parents, we need you to read with your kids, right? And it doesn't. This is the thing with reading. Like, so I'm gonna go ahead on record and say I don't like to read. I am a math and science brain. Like I would rather do some equations and some math problems. Like reading is not one of my hobbies. It is not something that I don't read for pleasure very often, right? I just don't like to read. But it's a skill that we need to develop. Now, what I will read are things that interest me,
Mhm.
right? So it doesn't really matter what you are reading, just read, right? So it could be reading the favorite magazine or reading you just read something, like just be reading, right? So so that your kids can get used to that practice of reading, because again, like we said, 70% of those who are incarcerated read at a fourth grade level. And a lot of that is because they haven't been pushed to read. So we really have to give our kids opportunity to read. If you don't feel comfortable reading, read along with the audio. Right. So just put on an audio book and read along with that, but then have that discussion about what was read. What did you get? Again, open-ended questions. Not like that was good, huh? Like it has to be
It
like,
was so good.
right.
Hmm.
Yep, sure was. But asking, but asking questions, what did you get out of that? What did you think about part X, Y, and Z, or what have you? Even if you are reading, you mentioned social media, and social media has, its pros and its cons. But if you're going to be on there, then let's read an article about something that's going on right now and let's talk about it. Let's read this article about the coronavirus. Do you think that people should be absolutely afraid and outraged about going to school? Like, how do you feel about going to school? What precautions are they taking at your school? Have you all talked about this, right? So just using any opportunity to have conversation, because when kids' guard comes down and they feel like you're actually listening, they tell all the things.
Hmm.
All the
They will
things.
tell you the tea, honey.
They will, but we just have to get in a posture to be able to listen. So I don't know if y'all have questions. We see y'all on, but make sure you ask them if you have them, so that
Hey, girl. Hey.
hey Kelly, so we can get your questions answered. So those are a couple of the things that I feel like parents can do. What do you think? What would you suggest?
So honestly, I think if parents are unable to be intentional because they're in survival mode, find an advocate, find someone that can
Yeah.
advocate on your behalf. That's really, really impactful. And I've, told parents that, hey, sometimes this might not be your lane.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And you might need to have someone that assists you and guides you in this lane on what to do, because you're not going to have all the answers. You don't know what you don't know. Right.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So if parents are unable to be intentional, get with an advocate, get with a neighbor, something that y'all can do a check and balance so that y'all could check in, like a village check-in. I think we need to get back to that whole community bonding and
Mm-hmm.
back to where, each one teach one and protect each other and, kind of hold space for each other. And I think once we start doing that, you'll start to see that, hey, I'm not here just for this child. I'm also here for this child too. And I
Right.
want to know, how I'm able to advocate, in accordance to the, law, of course. But and also just sometimes people, shame parents for not being at conference night or
Mm.
not being at certain places. And I discourage people from doing that because, again, you're alienating people. And a lot of times, the way that the school is set up, the children are alienated from the community, the parents are alienated from the community. And
Mm-hmm.
with the affordable housing crisis that we have in Tampa, the transportation and logistic issues that we have in Tampa, all of these play a part of the situation, the problem. And
Right.
so we can't continue to alienate communities and say, oh, you're not active, you're not involved because you don't show up. You might show up in
Yeah.
different ways where I text you and you respond back to me about some issue. Or if I call you about something, you are responsive to that and helping me address the issue that I'm having in the classroom.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And you made me think about something with bias again, because the perception is often that those parents that can't come to conference night is that they don't care about their kids and that they're lazy, right? When in actuality, they are working 2 and 3 jobs. So working 3 times harder than those of us who have jobs where we're getting paid a livable wage ish. We have PTO, we have sick time. So they don't have those things, right? So they've had to sack these jobs. And if they don't go to their job, they don't have a job. They don't
Mm-hmm.
get to just be like, oh, I need to run over to my child's school right quick, whatever, y'all cover my this and that. Like, that's not an option. So even eradicating that stigma, like, that's a lie, you know and schools don't do things at convenient hours. Like, I don't it's convenient for us because of the schedule that we're on, but if you think about, we start things at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock. Most people get off of work about 5, 6 o'clock. Those who are working a full-time job. Now, if you work the evening shift, for instance, you went in at 3 and you getting off at 11, you're never going to be able to come to conference night.
Mm-hmm.
So are we making things flexible for our parents and really figuring out how we're able to get them to be involved. And again, is the invitation even there? I was one of those teachers. I had a Google Voice number, and my parents had my cell phone. Like, and it wasn't like my actual number, but they had a way to contact me. Because if you can't call me until 10 o'clock at night, but I need to talk to you, then guess what? We talking at 10 o'clock at night because I've been trying to get in touch with you. And I understand. I will come to your job. Girl, you gonna make groceries? I will meet you at Walmart. And we can walk on aisle 5 and talk about what needs to happen, right? But a lot of teachers won't do that, and a lot of schools
Mhm.
won't do that. But we really, as educational system, we have to do a better job at making ourselves accessible um, for our parents, because they do care. Our parents send us the best that they have. Like, they're not keeping the good kids at home. Like, they're sending us the best kid that they got in the house. So it's our job to really make sure that we meet them halfway, and sometimes three-fourths of the way if they have more things going on.
Mhm.
I see Audra said, kids in my class ask me, please do not call my mom at work when I had data chats with them. All parents have my cell and remind. Yeah. Giving them some type of way to contact you. And what I would always say when I would call parents, I would tell them that I'm your eyes and ears when you're not here. Right. So you sent your kid here, and I just give them the benefit of the doubt. I'm like, I know that you want the best for your kid, and I know that y'all had a talk this morning. You wanted them to have a good day. Unfortunately, that hasn't happened. So I wanted to make sure that I let you know, because I'm your eyes and ears, and I knew that you would want to know. And
And,
most times they're like, and you right.
and to that point, also, I also want to remind educators that it's also important to navigate those relationships in a very positive way. So,
Hmm.
meaning that you do not just call them every time that there's an
Right,
issue,
right.
because then again, you're placing that my child, you don't ever call me about the good stuff. Is there any good things that's happening with my child? That shuts down. That shuts
Yeah.
down that.
And it also triggers trauma for them, especially if the parents didn't have a good experience in school themselves. And now
Yes.
they're seeing this cycle repeated, right? So we already know, like, your kids are you times 10, right? So if you didn't have good experience in school, and now your kid is not having good experience, they're triggered right back to how it was when they was sitting in the principal's office getting in trouble about everything. So who wants to walk into that type of situation? So
Mhm.
it goes far for to be able to give a parent some good news, and to help them understand that you're on their side, that we're in this together. And it truly does. You mentioned earlier, it takes a village. Like, we are a part of the village, and it truly does take that village to be able to help our kids. I did want to kind of bring the link back to restorative practices, because this is not just something that we do at school. It's also something, when you ask what the parents can do at home, it's also a type of way of dealing with our kids that we can do at home. And it's really rooted in, again, getting to the root cause. So I want to read you A Tale of Two Schools, and we have the graphic as well. So it starts out, it says, Carlos has a heated argument with his parents before leaving for school, so he's running late. Let's see the difference that restorative policies and practices can make. So, first, I'm going to read what happens in a traditional situation with our kids, zero tolerance type of situation. So, Carlos got into it with his parents. Carlos arrives at school. He's greeted by metal detectors and a police search. Carlos is late to first period class. His teacher scolds him in front of the class. Carlos talks back and is given his attention. Carlos gets into a minor altercation in the cafeteria. A school police officer detains and arrests both students. Later that afternoon, Carlos is held in a juvenile detention facility all afternoon, missing school. He now has an arrest record and is facing suspension. So that is the traditional trajectory of traditional discipline. This whole, you do something, you get suspended, we ain't with it, zero tolerance, get out of here, wasn't no questions asked, what have you. Notice that all of this started with Carlos having a bad morning.
Mm-hmm.
Something happened at home before Carlos got to school. And because of that, he's triggered all day, right? Again, in that first episode, we talked about it takes 30 to 90 minutes for a student or for a person, not just a student, for a person to de escalate after a traumatic event. Getting into it with your parents or getting into it with someone before you get to school, before you get to work, that's a traumatic event. Right. So it
Mm-hmm.
takes 30 to 90 minutes to de escalate. Carlos didn't have a chance. Soon as he got to school, he getting frisked, right? He done, and now he got an attitude. He get to first period instead of the teacher being like, "Hello," the teacher going off on him. So now he mad, like, "God dang, do you know what I had to deal with this morning?" Right? I don't.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So it just escalates, escalates, escalates. In comparison, I want to read you the restorative approach. So, in comparison, so again, Carlos has a heated argument with his parents before leaving for school, so he's running late. Carlos arrives at school. Teachers and administrators welcome him and fellow students as they enter. Carlos is late to first period class. His teacher waits until after class to speak with Carlos to learn more and sets up a meeting with his school counselor. Carlos gets into a minor altercation in the cafeteria. Student peer mediators and support staff intervene, have the students sit down together, and de escalate the situation. Later that afternoon, Carlos and the other student agreed to help clean the cafeteria during a free period. Carlos meets with his counselor and parents after school to help resolve the conflict at home. So, the difference in these two methods is that when you're talking about restorative practices, we ask questions, we get to the root of what is going on. We give the
Mm-hmm.
student an opportunity to right the wrong as opposed to just handing down a harsh discipline. What that does is it maintains their dignity. It helps them to learn coping strategies and helps them to learn how to de escalate a situation as opposed to escalate a situation. This same type of thing can be done at home. Asking the powerful question of what happened or what were you thinking when you did that? What could you have done differently? What did you learn from this situation? All of those are questions that lend to the restoration path as opposed to the discipline path. And the way that it disrupts that school to prison pipeline is we stop looking at the harshest way to institutionalize our students. Many of the students that get caught up in the school to prison pipeline again are Black and Brown students and our students with disabilities. So our ESC students. So these are the students that are most subjected to this. These are also the students that don't ever get opportunity to have a voice.
Yep.
So again, giving them a chance to be able to talk and giving them a chance to actually explore what they were thinking and to think about their thinking, because that's the skill that's needed to navigate through life, critical thinking skills,
Yep.
metacognition. Like this is needed in order to be a productive citizen. So that's something else that can be done. It's just shifting the way that we respond, right? So stop reacting and start responding.
I like that. That's a good quote.
Thank you. I made that up myself. No, not really. But but we become very reactive as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to responding and responding in a thoughtful manner. Again, that's going to keep someone's dignity intact. Like we really we these are people. Even though they're little people, they're still
Yep.
people, right? And they're people that are going to grow up to be big people. So we don't want to cause further trauma and injury because we're disappointed in a choice. We all make poor choices. All of us can go back. When people, I know people used to do this to you when you're like, I teach middle school. They're like, whoo,
Mm-hmm.
I remember, boy, I was really something when I was in middle school. Like, you know what I mean? So it's
Mm-hmm.
that age is a tough age, but just being a child, a school age child, is tough. All of us have been through that. All of us did things that we would take back if we could. But really having the opportunity to unpack that and really think through it. That's how we become better at making choices. Is you get the chance to think through the poor choice and
Mm-hmm.
learn from that choice. So yeah.
And I couldn't imagine being in middle school with social media, like how these kids are doing it. I couldn't, because I could barely do social media now with these adults. Just
Yeah.
imagine kids that their brain is not fully developed and they're making poor choices on TikTok and Snapchat and everything else.
Correct. And like we said last time, like it doesn't go away, right? So I know that you recommend the parents like charge the phone in a different room,
Yes.
right? Because that gives the time away and gives you an opportunity to reconnect. We spend so much time with our face and our phones, and I'm guilty of it as well. From time to time I get caught up and I'm playing a game, or I'm doing whatever. But being
Mhm.
super intentional about cutting that off at a particular time and really having conversation.
Mhm.
When we're talking about the whole child, are we simulating that part of the brain that is building and repairing relationships, even in the home? Our kids disappoint us every single day almost sometimes, like, especially during middle school. Like, they just a hot mess, y'all. They lose their mind. Like, they're crazy. So there's a lot of restoration and repairing that has to get done, because sometimes they just get in the zone and you're like, what were you thinking? But you need to be able to
Mhm.
have that conversation to really get to the root, and reminding them that even though you're disappointed in their choice, that you still love them.
Mm. And some people, they've had so much trauma with family experiences that they can't even open up and be vulnerable like that. And then you wonder why some of the children are so guarded, and they wear their heart on their sleeve because
Yeah.
of the trauma that's happening at the home.
Yeah. And we had talked about that too last episode, about the things that are hardwired within us, and being vulnerable is something that's number one taught, but you have to be in a safe space to feel that you can bring that guard down. And that's not happening if we coming at you like this, whether that's at
Mhm.
school, whether that's at home. Like, how do you expect for a child or a person to be vulnerable if they feel like they're being attacked?
Yeah.
It's not possible. Another thing that can be done is promoting deep breathing, which seems so simple, right? So we're always like, I breathe. I'm out here breathing. If I wasn't breathing, I'd be
You got to
dead.
be intentional with that though.
Yeah.
It's
So
so
really,
good.
yeah, so really taking the time to breathe, and recognize, like, so this is another thing. We can't always address everything right when it happens, right? So sometimes there needs to be a cooling off period. So sometimes you do need to go breathe for a moment, drink some water, and kind of bring it down a little bit, right? And then come back once all of this is done.
Mhm.
You know, but deep breathing really helps to promote that. So doing that, like, parents, if you're talking to your child and they're like not being able to articulate, and they're very frustrated, give them a moment. Go drink some water. Go breathe. No, I need to hear you. That's what I used to say. No, I need to hear you. I need to hear you
Mhm.
breathe. I need to hear the inhale and the exhale, because it needs to be deep breathing. And doing that for even 10 minutes is truly able to bring down that cortisol level. And cortisol is that stress hormone that promotes that fight, flight, or freeze. So, and that brings down the adrenaline level, right? So now we're able to have a productive conversation about what actually happened.
Yeah. There's some deep stuff.
What you thinking over there? I know I just be sitting here talking, girl. I can go on forever.
So I go back to the whole child, and I go back to, I'm just very thankful to have this segment with you to like talk about this, because sometimes we're missing the root of the child, and we continue to say, oh, that child is bad,
Mhm.
or this is what I hate the most. I don't know why my dogs are being disrespectful. See, this is why okay. But again, I go back to, when you say, oh, well, she's being fast, but she probably
Mm.
experienced sexual trauma. It's things like
You
that. It's
know
like,
that's a trigger for me right there. The whole fast girl narrative. Like, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I almost lost it.
it's just one of those things where, again, I just want us to focus on the child. And for everyone that's watching, for everyone that's listening, like, please have intentional conversations with your children. And if you don't have any children, at least have an intentional conversation with, a child in your family, to ask them
Mhm.
how their day was, asking them about more than just surface level things, but actually being intentional with these conversations. Because you know what, if you're not having conversations with your children about the things that make them vulnerable, the things that they want to be vulnerable about, I'm telling you right now, they're doing it on these apps, and
Yeah.
people are taking screenshots and using that vulnerability as a basically as a weakness, to bully, to torment, and these kids want to commit suicide. Like,
Mhm.
we have to wake up and realize that we have to be beyond just ourselves and think about the child, not just how they're doing today, but the whole child.
Yeah. Yeah, thinking about their spirit. So many of our kids are just so broken.
Yeah.
And there are so many opportunists out there who use all of that as an in. Back in our day, it was more like about gangs. But these days, you're talking sex trafficking and just all types of things are going on with our kids, and it's because they're looking for genuine connection, and their
Yeah.
soul is hurting, their spirit is broken, and we are not doing a good job at recognizing that. Something else I train for the district, so I train teachers, and one of the things I always urge teachers to do, and just people in general, is get out of the habit of just looking at people and actually see people.
Mm.
We spend so much time like looking, like I saw it, I looked at you, I acknowledged like that you were here, but can you
Mhm.
see that this person's spirit is broken? Can you see that there's something else that's going on, that they're just a little bit off today?
That's deep.
um really take the time to see, because when you mention so many of our kids are struggling with whether they even want to stay alive, there are signs. And
Yeah.
again, this is why I don't just ask people how they're doing in passing, right? If I'm going to ask you how you're doing, it's because I really want to know. And we're so trained to just be like, oh, I'm fine. But are you? So there's something called emotional integrity. And I know you always talk about integrity, but emotional integrity is truly being honest about what's going on. Like,
Mm.
if you're not fine, say you're not fine.
Yeah.
If someone asks you how you're doing today, like when I was going through my season at the end of 2019, people would ask me how I was doing, and I would say I'm mostly okay,
Yeah.
mostly. Like, but there was a lot that wasn't okay, right? But giving opportunity for that emotional integrity, and being willing to engage and truly see how you can support that person, support that child, and again, giving them a voice. Like, I just can't stress that enough, of how much we shut down our kids and don't give them a chance to talk. Let them talk. Let them.
Yeah.
They would. When I tell you, they will tell you the things. These kids will tell you so much if you just give them opportunity to be able to talk. Just let them talk.
Just listen.
That's it.
Just
That's
listen.
it. And just take mental note, and try to temper your shock factor, because school is real different from when we were in school. So try to temper that shock factor, because they might say some things that'll shock you, but
Mm.
use it as a chance to again, to bond, to grow, to repair some of the damage that has happened.
Yeah. And this is going to be a forever moving conversation, and I'm just so thankful for you, for taking the time out and just really talking to the people about it. And I know that, we've been on live for almost an hour, but I need people to understand that this is serious. Like, our
Yeah.
children are suffering out here, and if you live in Tampa and you're watching this from Tampa, we are leading the systemic failure in education in the state of Florida.
Yeah.
We're leading it. And so we have to get to the whole child. We have to figure out what's going on, how we can best support our babies. And we can't work in silos, and we can't say, not my child, not my problem.
Hmm. Yeah, we got to stand in the gap for those parents who are too overwhelmed, who just can't. Um, that's our responsibility to them, is to help when they cannot. Next show, I really want to talk about the difference, or the things that are happening with our Black and brown girls, versus our Black and brown boys.
That's going to be a good one.
Yeah, because the perception, I think, is that so much happens, with our boys, and it does. But looking at statistics about the things that happen with our Black and brown girls and the way that they are pushed out of school, I think is really shocking. But there are some real differences in how girls and boys learn and how they process information that we truly have to harness. Like I told y'all, I went to an all-girls school for high school. I am a firm proponent of single gender education. Like it works. But even if children are not in a single gender environment, there are still things that we can intentionally do to help our kids and truly foster that safe place for them. So I'm looking forward to that, because that's going to be really necessary. So I don't know if we haven't seen any more questions come through. So hopefully you all got out of this. Can y'all hear me? We want this to be a place where you're able to get your questions answered and really be able to use this as an educational zone, so that you can be empowered and really understand the steps that you can take for your own personal children, if you're an educator, for the kids that are in your classroom, and really be able to break the cycle. Like we said, this is all about breaking the cycle, and it takes one decision at a time, one person at a time, to be able to accomplish this. So if we all are working together in the same direction, something's got to change.
Mm-hmm.
Things just can't stay the same. So we are committed to getting this information out here to you all, and we just ask that you share and spread the word, because what we're talking about is not necessarily common knowledge. So we're kind of taking the veil off the mystery of education and some of the things that happen in the background, and more people need to know that. Like, education just needs
Yeah.
system of education needs to be more transparent. So we're going to do all that we can to provide that for you,
Yes, we
so
will.
that you all can use that to be able to help those around you.
So with that, I appreciate you guys tuning in. I'm so excited for the next episode, because I actually mentored with young girls before I moved to Tampa. I actually
Mm,
did a undergrad study, and I did an internship when I was a student at the University of North Florida. And I was actually in there to work and combat the issues with the prison to pipeline with our young girls. And I would
yeah.
mentor fourth and fifth graders,
Wow.
because that was what was identified as that age.
Mm-hmm.
So we dealt with, conflict resolution and all of that type of good stuff.
Yes.
So this
Yes.
is going to be a good episode. I'm so excited for next week, not 2 weeks from now, on Tuesday. So the flyer will be posted up for everyone to tune in. And thank you guys. If you have any questions, or you're tuning in on the replay, or you're listening on the podcast, submit your questions so that we can talk about it and we can continue this dialogue regarding the whole child, because it's important.
Yeah, for sure. So we'll see y'all next time. Thanks for hanging out with us.
All right. See y'all.